3 months had passed since Olivia and her group escaped Helios 4. They had found shelter on an abandoned moon base in a remote system far from regular Vexari patrol routes. The base was old, built with technology that seemed ancient even, by Vexari standards. Dust covered most surfaces, but the life support systems had activated as soon as they arrived, as if welcoming them home. Olivia sat alone in what they had discovered was an observation deck. Through the cracked dome ceiling, she watched the stars. Her dreams had grown more intense, more detailed. Last night she had dreamed of holding a weapon that could tear holes in space itself. "Can't sleep again?" Peter asked, entering the room. He had changed since their escape. They all had. He stood taller now, moved with a confidence none of them had possessed under Vexari rule. "The memories won't stop," Olivia said. "I keep seeing things I've never done, places I've never been." "Same here," Peter admitted. "Yesterday I found myself explaining the quantum principles of fold space travel to Mia. I don't even know what fold space is, but the words just came out." Their conversation was interrupted by Greg, who burst into the room with excitement in his eyes. "You need to see this. Alan found something in the lower levels." Olivia and Peter followed him through the twisting corridors of the moon base. The deeper they went, the less dusty it became. The walls here were different, smoother, with symbols etched into them that seemed to glow faintly when they passed. They entered a large circular chamber where Alan Winters stood before a strange capsule. Alan had been a mining engineer on Helios 4. His neural suppressor had failed completely 2 weeks ago, and since then his technical abilities had grown almost frightening. "What is it?" Olivia asked, approaching the capsule. "I think it's a neural enhancement chamber," Alan said, his fingers tracing the symbols on its surface. "Not meant to suppress like our implants, but to unlock." The capsule was large enough to hold a person. Its interior was lined with a material that shifted colors like oil on water. At one end was a headrest with thin, needle-like projections. "How? Do you know what it is?" Peter asked. Alan shook his head. "I just do. Like I've seen it before. Or used it," Olivia added quietly. They debated for hours what to do. 7 humans gathered in the ancient chamber, arguing whether to risk using technology they didn't understand but somehow recognized. "The Vexari are hunting us," Greg said. "If this can help us understand what's happening to us, we need to try it." "And if it kills whoever goes in," Mia countered. "We're barely surviving as it is." In the end, Alan volunteered. "My suppressor is already dead," he said. "If anyone can handle whatever this does, it's me." With nervous hands, they helped him into the capsule. As soon as he lay back, the needles extended, piercing the base of his skull where the suppressor sat. Alan's body went rigid, then began to convulse. The others moved to pull him out, but Olivia stopped them. "Wait," she said, watching as the colors inside the capsule swirled faster, flowing into Alan through the connection points. "It's doing something." For 6 minutes they watched Alan shake and twitch. Then suddenly he went still. The capsule opened with a soft hiss. Alan sat up with fluid grace that none of them had ever seen in a human before. His eyes were different, sharper, more focused. He looked at them, but it was as if he was seeing through them, beyond them. "Alan?" Olivia asked cautiously. "I remember," he said, his voice calm but filled with wonder. "I remember everything." Mason and Eliza had been on the run for weeks. They had stolen a long-range scout ship from Nexus 7's secondary hangar, barely escaping a Vexari patrol. Since then, they had jumped between remote outposts, always staying one step ahead of their pursuers. The scout ship was cramped, designed for only one Vexari pilot. They took turns sleeping in the single acceleration chair. Today was Eliza's turn to rest while Mason piloted. As he watched the starlight stretch in the view screen, Mason's mind filled with navigational calculations he shouldn't have known. He adjusted their course without thinking, his fingers finding controls he had never been trained to use. "You changed our heading," Eliza said, waking up and checking the navigation panel. "We were being followed," Mason replied, not questioning how he knew this. A Vexari cruiser was tracking our ion trail. I've adjusted our path to loop around the gas giant in this system. It should mask our signature. Eliza studied him. Your activation is progressing faster than mine did. Activation? That's what I think is happening to us. Not just remembering, but becoming what we were meant to be. She pulled out a small device she had taken from her lab on Nexus 7. I've been monitoring the changes in our brain patterns. The suppressor wasn't just limiting our intelligence or aggression. It was keeping whole sections of our DNA dormant. The ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life, breaking through the silence with a burst of static. A voice came through, a human voice using a language Mason had never heard before, yet somehow understood perfectly, to any awakened humans. We have established a safe haven at these coordinates. The predecessors left tools for us. We are remembering. Repeat, this is a message to any awakened humans? Eliza looked at Mason in shock. There are more of us out there. Mason listened to the coordinates hidden in the complex message and changed their course again. And they found something important. Admiral Zexvac stood on the bridge of the Vexari dreadnought Relentless. Before him, a holographic display showed the locations of all reported human escapes and anomalies. The pattern disturbed him greatly. They're gathering, he said to his second-in-command. These escape trajectories aren't random. They're converging. But how? Humans don't have any communication network of their own, the officer replied. Zexvac's 4 eyes narrowed. They didn't need one. Whatever is awakening in them includes some form of shared knowledge. He pulled up an ancient file, one that few in the Confederacy had access to. According to the records we found on Earth, the predecessors created humans with genetic memory, knowledge encoded directly into their DNA, passed down through generations, but locked away until needed. What knowledge, Admiral? How to fight. A war that nearly destroyed the galaxy 50,000 years ago. Zexvac closed the file. Prepare the fleet. We cannot allow them to fully awaken. As the Admiral gave orders, a junior communications officer approached nervously. Sir, we've intercepted a strange transmission on a frequency we've never documented before. It appears to be in some form of human language, but none that matches our records. Zexvac felt a chill run down his spine. They're already remembering. Their original language. We're running out of time. He turned to his second-in-command. Activate protocol dormancy. All humans in Vexari space are to be placed in stasis immediately. All of them, sir? That will cripple our workforce. Better than allowing them to remember what they truly are, Zexvac said grimly. Weapons that once brought the stars themselves to their knees. Mason Clark moved his mop across the polished floor of Nexus 7's main corridor. Sweat trickled down his back as he worked. The central administrative station of the Vexari Confederacy never slept, and neither did its cleaning staff. Mason kept his eyes down as a group of tall, blue-skinned Vexari officers walked past. They didn't even glance at him. Humans were invisible unless they made mistakes. Last night, the dreams had come again. Mason had seen Earth, not the subdued, conquered planet it was now, but something else. In his dreams, humans stood tall, fought with strange weapons, and commanded starships. He saw himself leading fleets against dark, shapeless things that twisted reality around them. Human, you missed a spot. Mason jumped at the harsh voice. Korvat, his supervisor, loomed over him. The Vexari's 4 yellow eyes narrowed in suspicion. Sorry, sir, I'll fix it right away, Mason said, quickly moving the mop to clean the mentioned area. You seem distracted lately, Korvat said, studying Mason with unusual intensity. Report to medical after your shift for a neural check. Mason's heart pounded. Neural checks often led to adjustments of the suppressor implant all humans received at birth. The small device at the base of his skull kept him docile, limited his learning abilities, and prevented any aggressive thoughts. At least, that's what it was supposed to do. Yes, sir, Mason replied, keeping his voice neutral despite his fear. As Korvat walked away, Mason touched the back of his neck. The suppressor had been itching lately. Sometimes he heard a faint buzz like static, That had never happened before. 8 hours later, Mason sat on the edge of his thin mattress in the crowded human quarters. He had skipped the neural check. It was the first time he had ever disobeyed an order. His hands trembled as he pulled out a small metal fragment he had found while cleaning near the station's engineering section. Something about it felt familiar, though he had never seen anything like it before. When he touched it, numbers and symbols flashed through his mind. Coordinates, flight patterns, weapon systems, things he couldn't possibly know. You didn't report to medical. Mason quickly hid the fragment as Corvette entered the human quarters. Other humans shrank back in their beds. "I'm sorry, sir. I felt ill after my shift." Corvette's upper lip curled back, showing sharp teeth. Humans don't skip appointments. Humans follow orders. He gestured to 2 security guards waiting in the corridor. "Take him to special research. Dr. Tenzur will want to examine this one." As the guards grabbed his arms, Mason felt something snap inside his mind. Without thinking, he twisted in a way his body shouldn't have known how, breaking free of their grip. His elbow connected with one guard's throat. His foot swept the other's legs from under him. Mason stood frozen in shock at what he had just done. So did everyone else in the room. Then he ran. Across the galaxy on the mining colony of Helios 4, Olivia Grant placed another drill charge in the rock face. The dust in the tunnel made it hard to breathe, but she had long ago gotten used to it. 6 years in the mines had hardened her body and dulled her mind, or so the Vexari overseers believed. 5 minutes until blast, she called to the other human workers. They began to shuffle toward the safety area. Olivia was about to follow when a sharp pain shot through her head. She gasped, dropping to her knees. Images flashed through her mind. Complex machines, weapon designs, energy systems beyond anything the Vexari used. Her fingers twitched, suddenly knowing how to build things she had never seen. "Olivia, are you okay?" Her friend Peter helped her to her feet. "I'm fine," she lied, pressing her palm against her neural suppressor. It felt hot to the touch. Just a headache. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. The images wouldn't stop. Her hands sketched designs on her thin blanket, fingers moving with purpose. When she finally dozed off near morning, she dreamed of a planet that wasn't Earth, a place with massive, underground facilities where humans were created, not born. She woke with absolute certainty. The suppressors were failing, and not just hers. At breakfast in the mining colony's cafeteria, she noticed the change in her fellow humans. Small things, straighter postures, quickened movements, eyes that held something beyond the usual empty compliance. "Something's happening to us," she whispered to Peter as they collected their ration packs. Before he could answer, alarms blared throughout the colony. The voice of Chief Overseer Draxel echoed through the speakers. "Attention, all security forces. Human containment breach in Sector 7. All humans return to quarters immediately." Instead of fear, Olivia felt a surge of excitement. "This is our chance," she said to Peter and 3 others nearby. "The maintenance bay has a transport ship. I know how to fly it." "How?" Peter asked, eyes wide. Olivia touched her suppressor. "I just do." In a secure meeting room on the Vexari homeworld, 7 high-ranking officials gathered around a table displaying holographic reports. The neural suppressor. "Failures are spreading," said Science Minister Velna. "Our latest firmware update has somehow triggered a cascading malfunction." "How many humans are affected?" asked Defense Commander Zortok. "Reports are coming in from 12 systems now," Velna replied. "The pattern suggests it's spreading." Zortok slammed a fist on the table. "We should have exterminated them when we had the chance. The council was too soft." "We needed their labor," another official countered. "And without their aggression traits, they were perfect servants. Until now." Zortok pulled up a classified file. "It's time you all learned the truth about humans. They weren't just some primitive species we happened upon. They were weapons. Living weapons created by the predecessors." Silence fell over the room as ancient images appeared, humans fighting creatures of shifting darkness wielding energy that bent space itself. "Impossible," whispered Velna. "The predecessors disappeared 50,000 years ago." "And left their weapons dormant," Zortok said grimly. The suppressors weren't our invention. We found the technology on Earth and modified it. The humans were already controlled, already sleeping. We just kept them that way. An urgent alert interrupted them. Helios 4 was reporting a stolen transport vessel. Security footage showed 5 humans operating technology they shouldn't have understood. It's starting, Zortak said. And if they fully awaken, if they remember what they truly are, the Vixari Confederacy will fall. Mason hid in the shadows of a cargo bay, heart racing. 3 dead guards lay behind him in various corridors. He hadn't meant to kill them. His body had just reacted. A soft voice came from behind a stack of containers. I know what's happening to you. Mason spun around, ready to fight. A human woman in a science uniform stepped out. Her name badge read Dr. Eliza Daniels. How did you find me? Mason asked. I've been studying the suppressor malfunctions, she said. I was monitoring neural anomalies when yours lit up the scanner like a supernova. She touched her own neck. Mine failed 6 months ago, but I've been hiding it. What's happening to us? Eliza's eyes shone with a mixture of fear and wonder. We're remembering, Mason. What we were before the Vixari. What we were made to be. And what is that? Mason asked, though somehow he already knew the answer. Weapons, she whispered. The most dangerous weapons ever created. 32 humans gathered in the command center of the moon base. What had started as a small group of escaped miners had grown as they raided Vixari outposts to free more of their kind. Alan stood at the center, explaining their next mission, using a holographic display that he operated with surprising skill. The Vixari have begun putting humans in stasis chambers throughout their territory, he said. They're afraid of what's happening to us. As they should be, said Mia, who had become one of their most skilled fighters since her activation in the neural chamber. Alan nodded. But there are millions of humans still under their control. We need to reach more of them before they're all frozen. Olivia studied the device in her hands, a small cylinder with intricate patterns etched into its surface. She had designed it based on knowledge that had simply appeared in her mind one morning. This should work to safely deactivate the neural suppressors without the pain we all experienced. It emits a targeted pulse that disables the device without damaging the brain tissue around it. We've tested it on the 5 humans we rescued last week, Peter added. It works perfectly. A signal chimed on their communications array. Greg, who monitored their security systems, looked up with concern. Unknown ship approaching. Small class, possibly a scout. Vexari? Alan asked, already moving toward the eye. Weapons locker. Greg shook his head. No, it's, responding to our beacon with the correct countersignal. It's other humans. Minutes later, Mason and Eliza were led into the command center. They looked around in amazement at the gathered humans, all standing tall, moving with purpose, so different from the hunched, fearful servants they had been. Welcome, Alan said, stepping forward to greet them. Mason stared at him. You're different, from the others, from us. I've been fully activated, Alan explained. We found a predecessor device that removes the final blocks on our genetic memory. Eliza moved forward eagerly. You've found predecessor technology? Actual working tech? Olivia nodded. This whole base is their design. We think it was a forward operating post during their war. What war? Mason asked. The room fell silent. Alan gestured for them to follow him deeper into the base, to a room they had discovered just days before. Inside was a large sphere that projected images into the air when activated. This is what we were made to fight, Alan said, touching the sphere. The image that appeared made Mason and Eliza step back in horror. It was a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to bend and distort the space around it. Parts of it existed, in dimensions they couldn't quite perceive, making their eyes hurt to look at it. The void entities, Alan said. Creatures from another dimension that feed on conscious thought. The predecessors fought them for centuries before creating us as weapons. We were designed specifically to combat them, Olivia added. Our minds can perceive and interact with their dimensional shifts in ways the predecessors couldn't. Mason felt something stir in his memories. Fleet formations, he said suddenly. I keep seeing battle strategies, fleet movements in my dreams. Eliza looked at him with new understanding. And I keep seeing medical procedures, ways to enhance human abilities. She turned to Alan. We all have different memories, don't we? Alan nodded. The predecessors didn't put all knowledge in each human. We were specialized. Different humans carried different parts of the whole. So what do we do now? Mason asked. Alan's face grew serious. We need to find Genesis. What's Genesis? Eliza asked. Not what, where, Olivia replied. According to the memories we've recovered, it's the planet where humans were first engineered, where the predecessors kept their elite human forces. Earth wasn't our first home, Alan explained. It was just a breeding colony, a place to grow our numbers while keeping us dormant until needed. But the Vexari found us during our sleep cycle, Olivia added. They mistook us for simple natives and enslaved us. They had no idea what we really were. And now they're trying to keep us from waking up, Mason said. Alan nodded grimly. We need to get to Genesis before they block all routes to it. If the coordinates in our shared memories are correct, there's an army waiting for us there. Admiral Zexavac stood in the war room, surrounded by star charts and tactical displays. Reports from across Vexari space showed the growing human problem. Despite protocol dormancy, many humans had escaped or were showing signs of activation even within their stasis chambers. The situation grows worse, Admiral, his intelligence officer reported. We've lost contact with 4 outposts in the Barren sector. Our scouts found them empty, all humans gone, along with several transport ships. They're organizing, Zexvac said, faster than we anticipated. A science officer stepped forward nervously. Admiral, we've been analyzing the neural patterns of captured awakened humans. There's something strange in their genetic code, a kind of embedded map. A map to what? We're not certain, but it appears to lead to a star system in the Forbidden Zone. Zexavac's 4 eyes widened. The Forbidden Zone was an area of space the first Vexari explorers had marked as off-limits thousands of years ago. No records explained why, only stern warnings never to enter. They're heading for Genesis, he whispered. Sir? The officer looked confused. Ready my flagship, Zexvac ordered, and summon the 7th Fleet. I know where they're going. The human fleet, if it could be called that, consisted of 15 stolen vessels of various sizes. They flew in perfect formation despite having no formal training. Mason stood on the bridge of their largest ship, a Vexari cruiser they had captured 2 weeks earlier. His hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, as if he had commanded starships his entire life. Approaching the boundary of the Forbidden Zone, Olivia reported from her station. Any sign of pursuit? Mason asked. Nothing yet, but our sensors can only reach so far. Eliza entered the bridge, looking excited. I've been studying the base's records with Alan. We think we know why Genesis was hidden away. It's not just a planet. It's a fortress, the last stronghold of the predecessors before they vanished, and potentially home to thousands of fully activated human warriors, Alan added, following her onto the bridge. Mason was about to respond when alarm signals blared across the command console. Multiple ships dropping out of faster than light. Travel, Peter called from the sensor station. Vexari signatures, it's a full battle fleet. On the main view screen, dozens of Vexari warships appeared, led by a massive dreadnought. They found us, Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fear evident on her face. Mason felt a strange calm settle over him. Knowledge unfurled in his mind. Battle tactics, evasive maneuvers, weapon systems beyond what this stolen ship should have possessed. They haven't found us, he said with sudden certainty. They found Genesis. They're here to stop us from reaching. He looked at the others, his eyes reflecting a confidence he had never known under Vexari rule. And they're going to fail. He turned to the communications array. All ships, prepare for breakthrough pattern Delta. We're going home. Space lit up with weapon fire as the human fleet engaged the Vexari blockade. Mason's hands flew over the controls, guiding their stolen cruiser through patterns that confused the Vexari targeting systems. The other human ships followed his lead, perfectly, as if they could read his mind. "Shields at 60%, Peter called out as their ship shook from a direct hit. "Two of our smaller vessels are taking heavy damage," Olivia reported. "The Vexari are focusing fire on our weakest points." Mason nodded, unsurprised. "That's what I would do." He opened a channel to all their ships. "Group 3, break formation and draw their fire. Group 2, prepare to make a run for the gap near the gas giant. The rest of you, follow me." The battle unfolded like a complex dance. The human ships, though outnumbered and outgunned, moved with surprising effectiveness. For every ship they lost, they disabled 2 Vexari vessels. "How are we doing this?" Eliza asked, watching the tactical display. "None of us were trained for space combat." "We were," Alan said quietly. "Just not in this lifetime." A massive explosion rocked their cruiser as the Vexari dreadnought scored a direct hit. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Engine core damaged," Peter shouted. "We're losing power." Mason remained calm. "Divert all remaining power to forward shields and thrusters." He studied the tactical display, seeing a narrow opening appear in the Vexari formation. "There's our chance. All ships with functional drives prepare to make the jump to Genesis on my mark." Their damaged cruiser limped forward, drawing heavy fire as the smaller, faster human ships slipped through the gap in the Vexari defenses. One by one, they vanished into faster-than-light travel toward the coordinates that called to them from their shared genetic memory. "They made it," Olivia said with relief. "And so will we," Mason replied, his voice firm. "Prepare for one final push." Their cruiser surged forward, shields failing as it absorbed punishment meant for the escaping ships. Just as their engines began to give out, they reached the jump point. Stars stretched around them as they entered faster-than-light travel, leaving the Vexari fleet behind. When they dropped back into normal space, a blue-green planet hung before them, Genesis. It looked ordinary from orbit, with vast oceans and 3 small continents. But to the humans on the bridge, it felt like coming home to a place they had never seen before. "The others are already landing," Peter said, indicating the signals of the human ships that had arrived ahead of them. "Our engines are failing," Olivia warned. "We need to get down there quickly." Mason guided their damaged cruiser into the atmosphere, fighting the controls as systems failed around them. They broke through cloud cover to see a vast plain below, and at its center, a massive structure half buried in the earth. It looked like a temple or fortress with towers rising hundreds of meters into the sky. "There," Alan said, pointing. "That's the main facility." They crash-landed 2 kilometers from the structure. As they emerged from the damaged cruiser, they saw the other human ships had landed closer to the facility. Humans were already approaching the massive doors, which stood open as if expecting them. "They're waiting for us," Mason said, though he wasn't sure how he knew this. As they approached the facility entrance, they were met by Mia, who had arrived on one of the first ships. "You need to see this," she said, her voice filled with awe. "It's beyond anything we imagined." Inside, the facility stretched deep underground. The walls were made of a material that seemed to shift colors when viewed from different angles. Symbols similar to those in the moon base covered every surface, but here they glowed with steady light. The humans who had arrived earlier were exploring different chambers, calling out discoveries to each other with excitement. Mia led them to a vast central hall. Rows upon rows of transparent pods filled the space, stretching as far as they could see. Inside each pod was a human figure, perfectly preserved in some form of stasis. "There are thousands of them," Eliza whispered. "Elite warriors," Alan said, approaching one of the pods. "Created for the final battle against the void entities." "Why are they still here?" Olivia asked. "Why didn't they wake up when the suppressors started failing?" Alan studied the control panels near the pods. "These aren't suppressed. These are fully activated humans who were put in stasis voluntarily." He looked up with wonder in his eyes. "They're waiting for the right moment to awaken." A soft hum filled the air as the facility's systems responded to their presence. Lights brightened along pathways, leading deeper into the complex. They followed, drawn by some instinct they all shared. The pathway led to a smaller chamber dominated by a raised platform. On it stood a single stasis pod, different from the others. The human inside was a woman with short dark hair and a face that somehow seemed both youthful and ancient. As they entered, the pod began to open. "What's happening?" Mason asked, stepping forward. "I think our presence triggered a revival protocol," Eliza said, watching as the pod completed its opening sequence. The woman's eyes opened. She sat up with fluid grace and studied them with an intensity that made them step back. When she spoke, her voice was clear and carried an authority none of them had heard in a human before. "I am Commander Samantha Klein, Elite Guardian Force." She looked at each of them in turn. "You're partially activated. Interesting. How long has it been?" "How long since what?" Mason asked. "Since the predecessors left," Samantha replied, stepping out of the pod. She moved like a predator, balanced and deadly. "We believe it's been about 50,000 years, Eliza said. Samantha showed no surprise at this answer. "And the void entities? Have they returned?" "We don't know," Alan admitted. "We only just discovered what we are. The Vexari found Earth and enslaved humanity while we were dormant." "Vexari?" Samantha frowned. "I don't recognize that species." "They rose to power after the predecessors disappeared," Olivia explained. "They've built an empire spanning much of the galaxy." Samantha's expression hardened. "And they enslaved my people." It wasn't a question but a statement filled with cold anger. "Yes," Mason said. "They found the suppressor technology and modified it to keep us docile. We were their servants for over 2 centuries. Until the suppressors began to fail," Alan added. "Now they're hunting us, trying to put all humans in stasis before we fully awaken." Samantha walked to a control panel and placed her palm against it. The entire facility hummed in response. Displays activated around the room, showing star charts, battle plans, and biological data on the void entities. "The Vexari are the least of our concerns," she said grimly. "If it's been 50,000 years, then the containment fields are failing. The void entities will return soon." "How do you know?" Eliza asked. "Because that's why we were put in stasis," Samantha replied. "The predecessors knew the containment wouldn't last forever. We were their contingency plan." She studied the displays with practiced eyes. "According to these readings, the dimensional barriers are already weakening." "Where?" Mason asked, stepping closer to see the displays. Samantha pointed to a region of space on the star chart. "Here. The highest concentration of barrier decay is in this sector." Mason recognized the coordinates. "That's the central worlds of the Vexari Confederacy." "Then that's where the void entities will emerge first," Samantha said. "And when they do, every conscious mind in that region will become food for them." She turned to face the group, her eyes reflecting determination and purpose. "Which means we have a choice to make. Do we let the Vexari face extinction as payment for what they did to us? Or do we remember what we were truly made for?" Before anyone could answer, alarms sounded throughout the facility. On the monitors, they saw Vexari, ships entering orbit around Genesis. "It seems," Samantha said calmly, "that choice may have just been made for us." Samantha led them through corridors that descended deeper into the Genesis facility. Alarms continued to sound as the Vexari ships began landing troops on the surface. "We don't have much time," she said, her movements quick and purposeful. "The revival process for the others has already begun, but it will take hours to wake them all." "What about the Vexari?" Olivia asked, struggling to keep pace. "They're a distraction we can't afford right now." Samantha stopped at a massive door that slid open at her approach. Inside was a chamber larger than anything they had seen so far. At its center sat what could only be described as a ship, though unlike any vessel they had ever encountered. It was sleek and predatory in design, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It had no visible engines or weapons, yet radiated power. "The Stormbreaker," Samantha said with something like affection in her voice. "The predecessor's final gift to us." "It's a ship?" Mason asked. though he already knew the answer. It's a dreadnought, Samantha corrected, designed specifically to fight the void entities and travel between their dimension and ours. Alan circled, the vessel with wonder in his eyes. How does it work? It responds to human neural patterns, our patterns specifically. The predecessors engineered us to interface with their technology in ways they couldn't. Samantha placed her hand on the hull and a section melted away, forming an entrance. You've all been remembering your roles. Now it's time to fulfill them. Inside, the ship was a marvel of technology beyond even Vexari capabilities. The bridge had stations that seemed designed for each of their specific skills. Mason was drawn to the command center, while Olivia found herself before engineering controls she somehow understood. Eliza discovered medical systems, and Alan gravitated toward weapons. As they took their positions, the ship hummed to life around them. This feels right, Peter said, settling at the navigation station. Like coming home. The facility shook as explosions sounded from above. The Vexari had breached the outer defenses. Time to leave, Samantha said, taking a position beside Mason. The others will follow in the stasis ships once they're awake. Mason placed his hands on the control interface and knowledge flooded his mind. He saw the ship's capabilities, its purpose, its history. More importantly, he saw what they needed to do. The void entities, he said, looking at Samantha. They're already breaking through, aren't they? She nodded grimly. The first rifts have formed, small ones but growing. We need to contain them before they establish a foothold in this dimension. The ceiling of the chamber began to retract, revealing the sky above. Vexari ships circled, firing weapons that barely scratched the facility's ancient shields. Everyone ready? Mason asked, his fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. The Stormbreaker rose smoothly, its systems responding to their collective thoughts more than their physical commands. The ship burst from the underground chamber like a predator from its den, shooting past the surprised Vexari vessels and into space. Admiral Zexvac watched in shock from the bridge of his flagship as an unknown vessel emerged from the planet's surface. It moved with impossible speed, evading all attempts to target it. "What is that?" he demanded. His science officer stared at the readings in disbelief. "Unknown design, Admiral, but it's radiating energy signatures similar to the artifacts we found on Earth." Zexvac's blood ran cold. "Predecessor technology. They've found weapons. Sir, it's hailing us." Mason's face appeared on the Vexari view screen. "Admiral Zexvac, I presume. This is Mason Clark of the human vessel Stormbreaker. We need to talk." "There is nothing to discuss, human," Zexvac snarled. "You will surrender immediately." "You don't understand," Mason replied calmly. "We're not here to fight you. We're here to save you." Before Zexvac could respond, alarms blared across his bridge. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "spatial anomalies forming in the Praxis system. They match the patterns in the ancient warning files." The color drained from Zexvac's face. Praxis was one of the most populated systems in the Confederacy, home to billions of Vexari. "Showing you the feed from Praxis now," Mason said. The transmission changed to show a horrifying sight. Rifts in space itself, dark and writhing with otherworldly energy. Through them emerged shapes that hurt the eyes to look at. The void entities. "This is what we were created to fight," Mason continued. "Your people are in danger, Admiral. The choice is yours. Continue this pointless battle against us, or join forces against the real enemy." For the first time in his long military career, Zexvac felt true fear. "How do we stop them?" "You don't," Samantha's voice came through. "But we can. It's what we were made for." 3 days later, the Stormbreaker led a mixed fleet of human and Vexari ships toward the largest rift near Praxis. Behind them followed vessels containing hundreds of awakened elite warriors from Genesis. On the bridge, Mason and Samantha coordinated the battle plan with Admiral Zexvac, whose initial distrust had given way to desperate cooperation as reports came in of void entity attacks spreading across Vexari space. "Our ships can't get close to the rifts," Zexvac said. The reality distortions disable our systems and drive our crews mad. That's why we'll lead the attack, Samantha replied. Your ships provide perimeter defense against any entities that break through our lines. Mason studied the tactical display, showing the growing rifts. The primary rift is the key. If we can seal it using the Stormbreaker's dimensional anchors, the smaller ones should collapse. Olivia approached from her engineering station. The interface systems are ready, but there's something you both should know. Her face was grim. The dimensional anchor requires a human mind to guide it. The neural load will burn out whoever controls it. Silence fell over the bridge. Finally, Mason spoke. I'll do it. No. Alan stepped forward. My suppressor failed first. I've been activated the longest. It should be me. Samantha shook her head. I've been trained for this specific mission. It was always meant to be one of the elite warriors. In the end, they chose by skill and compatibility. Alan's engineering background made him the most suited to guide the anchor. As they approached the rift, he entered the interface chamber. It's been an honor, he said simply before the door sealed. The battle was like nothing any of them had witnessed before. The human ships moved through the reality distortions with relative ease, their crews shielded by their unique genetics. The void entities fought back with weapons that bent space and time, destroying several vessels in the first attack wave. The Stormbreaker pushed through toward the primary rift, taking heavy damage but pressing forward. Inside the interface chamber, Alan's mind merged with the ship's systems guiding the dimensional anchors. Anchors deployed, Olivia reported, her voice tight with emotion. Energy signature building. The massive anchors extended from the Stormbreaker, driving into the edges of the rift. Energy poured from them, forcing the tear in reality to close. The void entities howled in alien frequencies that made the humans double over in pain. It's working, Peter called out. The rift is closing. As the primary rift sealed, the smaller ones began to collapse. The remaining void entities found themselves cut off, trapped in a dimension not their own. The human ships hunted them down one by one. The victory came at a heavy cost. 7 human vessels were lost, along with 14 Vexari ships. And Alan, as predicted, did not survive the neural interface. 1 month later, Mason stood with Samantha, Olivia and Eliza on the observation deck of the Genesis facility. Admiral Zexvac had come alone under a flag of truce. My government is prepared to recognize human independence, the Admiral said formally. In light of your actions at Praxis, we can no longer view your kind as mere servants. And the suppressors? Mason asked. Will be removed from all humans in Vexari space, Zexvac confirmed. Though I admit, many of my people fear what will happen when humans fully remember what they are. Samantha's expression remained neutral. As well they should. We were created as weapons, Admiral. Weapons that can think and choose. And what do you choose now? Zexvac asked. Mason looked out at the stars visible through the transparent dome overhead. To remember our purpose but define our own future. The void entities will return someday. The barriers between dimensions are weakening. When that day comes, humanity will stand ready. And until then, the Admiral pressed. Until then, Mason replied, pray we don't need to remember the full extent of what we are.